The Jetsons' Cogswell's Caper is another big ending for the Famicom. Not one, but two major companies are departing the system with this one. Let's start with the company whose name is on the box, Taito. This is their 49th game for the Famicom. They doubled up on 18. And they're one of the very few companies who bothered to number all of their releases for me. Before the Famicom, Taito was already a massive company in arcades, and they began on the Famicom with a port of their industry-defining hit Space Invaders. A very bad port of Space Invaders. In fact, Taito had a lot of trouble early on with the Famicom, perhaps due to not putting many resources toward the Famicom when they were still big in arcades. Their most infamous release from that time was Takeshi no Chosenjo, an adventure game where they took every weird idea that a drunk comedian came up with and put it in one game. Taito had a thing for technical innovation. They had the first game to let you save your progress using an internal battery, and gave the Famicom analog controllers for Arkanoid and Arkanoid 2. And so the biggest series on the Famicom that they were known for were the Bakusho Jinsei Gekijo line of board games. But they made a lot of really good one-off games, and in particular, their output at the very end of the Famicom's life has been some of their best. And part of that is because Taito has been handing off a lot of the development work to Natsume. Natsume has a different history than a lot of the companies I've been talking about. They didn't come from computers or have a history in arcades. Natsume was created to make Famicom games. It started because a group of developers left Konami and set up their own group. They started out with small projects like the adventure game Toho Kenbun Roku. Natsume both acted as their own publisher and as a contract developer at the same time. The technical skill and artistry that Natsume demonstrated in their games has made them a really big player in the last half of the Famicom's life, though they weren't without missteps in some of their contract dealings. They did some of the porting work on Heroes of the Lance after all. But they have consistently made some of the very best Famicom games of the previous 5 years. The Jetsons is a pretty good note to go out on. I wouldn't call it a top-tier game, but it is one that demonstrates the high level of quality that we want from Natsume, and Taito's giving us one last exceptional platformer. But since it is a very late Taito game, you will have to pay for this one. Cartridge-only copies demand prices way above the threshold needed to be a member of the 10,000 yen club. And of course it's incredibly rare. I've only ever seen 2 copies for sale, and I'm playing one of them. The Jetsons is a Hanna-Barbera cartoon from the 1960s, and it was basically their follow-up to the Flintstones. Instead of moving a standard sitcom of the era to the Stone Age past, they moved it to the far future and called it a day. From what I gather, the Jetsons has absolutely no following in Japan, and it's not like there were successful films or anything like that to help drive attention toward it. The plot of the game is that George Jetson is sent off by his boss to disrupt the manufacturing of a rival company. He'll have to work his way through 8 stages of industrial facilities, plus several very short stages where his family are hanging out waiting to give him power-ups. This is a side-scrolling action platformer where A jumps and B does actions. Yes, that is vague. What you'll usually want to do on stages is walk up to boxes, hit B, and that'll lift them over your head, and then you can hit B again to throw them. Thrown boxes will knock out enemies. Thrown boxes will either rocket straight out from you, or if you hold up and press B, you'll toss them in a gentle arc. Hiding behind the boxes that you pick up are some vital items. They're also sometimes dropped by enemies. Pills are used to power special equipment that George will get throughout the game. You start with 10, and can have a maximum of 99. Collecting 10 of the stars will get you an extra life, and that makes it important to pick up every single box you can find, so that you could collect a few more of those. Small hearts restore 1 point of George's health. When you start, you have a maximum of 3 hearts, but collecting a large heart will let you extend that to a maximum of 5. Finally, the picture of George's face is an extra life. Also hiding behind the boxes can be small robots, so you'll want to be careful about going through them too quickly. If you stand in front of a switch and hit B, you'll activate it, and those have a pretty wide variety of effects. You could flip gravity upside down, or you can activate machinery in the area. At the end of every long stage, you'll face a boss. These tend to have simple patterns, and the challenge is getting in between their shots to pick up a box, then avoiding their attack while you hit them with it. In between the major stages, you'll have these very short stages that are only 2 or 3 screens long. They could be considered challenge levels. All you really need to do is get to your family member at the far side. At the end of some stages, you'll get an item that will help you on your mission. These are activated by hitting start, and then right and left to select what you want. The first and most important of these is a drone. After you activate it, it will buzz around George, and then you hit the B button to make it attack the nearest enemy. This one costs 5 pills to use. The next item you receive is a force field that will prevent you from taking damage with your next hit, and that costs 20 pills to use. And the last one I got while I was playing were magnetic boots, that when you turn them on, you can stick to the ceiling. It ticks down pills as you use them. If you get a game over, you can continue as many times as you like, though you go back to the start of your current stage. You also go back to 10 pills, and on some stages they really want you to have a lot of pills available, so you might find yourself in a very difficult situation as a result of that. As you might expect, since the Jetsons aren't really popular in Japan, this is yet another late Famicom game that no one remembers there. On the other hand, I think it's really good. There's some really exceptional stage design here with a variety of challenges, and I liked how you had to throw objects to defeat enemies in this game. My biggest complaint is that you really do have to search everywhere, and that slows the game down a bit. It's also kind of short, but relatively challenging. Not anything that will take you a while to beat, but just enough pushback to let you feel like you're overcoming something. This is a perfect example of a very late console game. All the technical tricks have been mastered, and everything is polished to a perfect shine.